This episode of the podcast is brought to you by Canna Health.
What if you had such a clear understanding of your own DNA and genetic makeup that you could make informed decisions about what type of cannabis products you should buy that best interact with your system? Well, now you can with EndoDNA. EndoDNA is a simple DNA test that maps your entire endocannabinoid system and then matches that summary with a specific cannabinoid ratio and terpene profile that's aligned with your unique genotype. Imagine being armed with personal information when visiting a dispensary. You'll have the power and capability to purchase products that best aligns to your genotype. Visit their website to purchase the EndoDNA collection kit and Endo Decoded report at endodna.com/products and use the promo code CONNECT15 for a 20% discount. Again, that's endodna.com/products and use the promo code CONNECT15 for a 20% discount. The future of cannabinoid therapeutics is here with EndoDNA. Hello, my fellow people of the plant. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Cannabinoid Connect podcast, your favorite podcast that includes industry-facing conversations with the industry's leading experts that aim to educate and inform the public regarding the plant's endless benefits. My guest today is Madison Fiore. He's the head of growth at Hawke Media. What's up, Madison? Thanks for joining us today.
Hey, Kevin, how's it going? Thanks for having me.
I'm good, man. I'm really good. How's the weather in LA today?
Another beautiful day, 70 and sunny. See right behind, I got the backyard. I don't see any wind, so it's going to be a nice weekend.
Nice. Yeah, today it finally started warming up a little bit in Dallas, and it's looking like it's going to stay that way this weekend. I'm hoping I can get out on the golf course. So yeah.
Nice to see people out again, man. I was driving around. I'm in LA, and I was driving around last night, and just seeing people out at restaurants and kind of feeling the city come back to life was a great feeling.
Isn't it? It's very it's weird how, like, as you said, when things are opening up, I had the same exact feeling, and you can feel the energy in the air.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you know, that first day in Texas when businesses were back at 100%, I told my wife, I was like, do you feel that? Like, there's a lot of action and energy going on, you know, even when we were driving past different neighborhoods and stuff. So
I think that's why people love New York so much. Every time I go to New York, I'm usually like an early to bed, early to rise kind of guy. And every time I'm in New York, I look down at my watch and it's, 11, 12 o'clock, 1 a.m. And I'm like, I'm not even tired. There's just so much energy in the city.
Absolutely. Especially when you get off that subway, or if you're just commuting, right? It's just, people are everywhere and they're all heading to their own destination. And it is quite, I guess the word is like thrilling, in a way. So Madison, I know that you're with Hawke Media. You're the head of growth at Hawke Media. And from my understanding, you've been with the agency for 4 years, and you focus specifically on CBD/hemp cannabis, right? We'll get into that. But it wasn't always like that, was it? Did you cover other accounts and other industries as well before entering cannabis? And if so, why did you make that transition?
Yeah, absolutely. So I've been at Hawke for over 4 years now. When we started, we were, I think, 25-person team, which isn't a small agency, but much smaller than we are now. And we really focus on like e-commerce, CPG, brands that you can build online. And that ethos still runs throughout the entire agency, right? Like building and growing brands online is really what we're good at. In 2018, we started working with Papa & Barkley, and I truly had no idea how big or special the company they were.
Yeah.
We quickly realized that this is not a typical, e-commerce brand. There's a lot of rules. There's a lot of limitations. There's a lot of things you can't do, can't say. And so we started staffing up for that account. And, fast forward 3 years later, now we've built what we call internally the Canna team, which is essentially a team that focuses on staying in the know of what you can do, what you can't do, what's working, what's not working, kind of staying up to date with rules and regulations. So over time, that team has just gotten bigger and more passionate. As an agency, we've got 200 full-time employees. We still specialize in building brands online. But within the agency, I lead up to what we think of as the Canna team, someone that really helps build and grow these types of brands specifically.
That is so cool. I like that name, the Canna team.
Yeah.
And that's actually a good kind of starting point when you talk about Papa and Barkley, because I've had two of their one. I mean, I had their founder on, Adam Grossman, but I've also had Guy Rocourt, and who's on as well. And their brand story is incredible, right?
Yep.
You have Adam, whose father was suffering from different ailments, I think particularly in his lower back. And he tried different medications, different kind of therapeutic remedies. Nothing seemed to be working as well as cannabis, right? I mean, I think, didn't he make that rub in his kitchen on his own like kitchen stove?
Yep.
And that was with his own research, right?
Yep.
So it's an incredible story from the testimonial standpoint, but then when you say entering the cannabis space from the marketing agency perspective, it's a whirlwind, because there's heavy regulation, there's heavy stipulation on claims and what statements, what you can and can't say. And so what's it like to work with a brand like Papa and Barkley, who clearly has a testimonial of efficacy because the brand in itself is wrapped around that story? And what are the challenges to market that story while remaining in the guidelines of the the regulations?
Yeah, well, that brand in this space is a lazy marketer's worst nightmare, right? If you're a lazy marketer, stay away from this space, because there's many things that are considerably easier to execute on. Less rules, less red tape, more channels, easier conversion paths. So staying in the know and being on top of and being passionate is a prerequisite for this space, because you really have to put the time and energy into understanding what you can do, what you can't do, and what's working. With that brand specifically, one of my favorite things is, very small brands will come to us and say, hey, how did they do it? How did they do it? And I'm sure they have an incredible growth strategy. But what I love about that is it wasn't just a classic throw up a website, drive traffic to the website and try to convert. When I met with Kimberly, the CMO at the time, she and the team that I worked with, David, told me that, and I want to say I got this number right, but I'm pretty sure it was, they did 169 events in 1 year. Wow. Which they're, that's more than 2-3 events a week. That's more than 3 events a week.
Right.
And so their ground game was just unmatched. And so when you have so many thousands of people seeing your product and trying your product for free, it makes a bigger difference when they see you on the shelf the next time they come into the dispensary and they look to buy something on delivery.
So Madison, that brings up an interesting point, right? Because myself personally, I've been in the digital marketing space for 10 years now, right? Working for large corporations and even running my smaller boutique agency. And what has been the clear message when you go to different marketing events and whatnot is this whole, transition to digital, mobile first, right? People are glued to their phones, they're on their computers. E-commerce is important, driving traffic to websites are important. But the statement you made just now kind of really reinforces how important, specifically in the cannabis industry, how trade show events, on the ground marketing is super important because of kind of the restrictions that we have on the digital space when it comes to social media and email marketing, right?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I think there's a few things that I continually see, right? There's just consistencies across the board. The first one is, I'm sure you've probably seen it, a lot of the bigger brands, well-funded cannabis brands, are bringing in executives from the beverage space. And that's because of 2 things. One, alcohol is almost never bought online, right? It's almost always bought in the store, unless it's on some sort of delivery service, very similar to cannabis.
Or it's like a wine membership or something, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Or the other thing is that many people want to kind of look at it and talk to somebody before they buy it, right? So, a sommelier, or you talk to the wine clerk or the beer, whoever's there. And so having that interaction is really important. So when we look at the cannabis space, we start to see like sampling and tasting and trials and free samples be really, really valuable. And I'm not just talking about the THC side, I'm talking about the CBD side as well.
Sure.
But it's a really interesting thing. And I see those commonalities really continuously happening. But the other thing is that this space, what we normally see, the brands that are winning, right, 10, 20, $50 million revenue brands and above, what they're doing is they've got a brand, they've got a logo, they've got a product, and they probably have a really great sales team, right? Because getting those products on the shelves and in those delivery services is more than half the battle. But then once you get there, our job is really important to try to own that customer, right? Get them on those own channels like email, on your social, get them on the channels that you actually own the customer. That way you're not just giving your products to the customers of the dispensary and the delivery services.
Mm-hmm. One thing that when you ran off that list, one thing that I would add, and maybe you're baking into branding, is the storytelling aspect, right? Mm-hmm. Like the fact that Papa and Barkley, like from the offset, like if you didn't ask the question, why is the company named Papa and Barkley, you wouldn't mm-hmm. understand the origin of which the brand name came about, right? And that is Adam's dad, who's Papa, and then Barkley, which is their dog, right? And I think that his granddaughter would call them, Papa and Barkley. And so, but yeah, storytelling is super important, man. And so when you transition from like other kind of legacy industry accounts within the agency at Hawke Media to CBD, like mm-hmm. what have you seen have been really some of the pain points and challenges when it comes to marketing, and have those pain points gotten better?
Yeah, I think the first thing that's incredible to me, as I've been in this industry for a while now, is that so many of the brands don't even have like the basic setup, right? They don't even have like a welcome series, or they don't even have like a newsletter. They're not segmenting their email list. They don't have an organic social media strategy. They don't have a website that really tells the brand ethos and the brand story. There's so many of these just like super basic fundamental marketing 101 things that just about every single e-commerce company has before they even sell a product. So many of these cannabis brands do not. And then on the CBD side, there's so much competition to win on e-commerce that the brands that, throw together, 2 tinctures, a basic product, a basic Shopify site, and then some MailChimp flows, and then they come to us worried about why they're not driving revenue. It's like, well, you have to understand that if you're a CBD consumer and you're actually looking for CBD, you really have to fulfill those needs, whether it's on education or entertainment through content on your site and throughout your marketing mix in order to convert. So you really have to fill up with great imagery, and that can be lifestyle or kind of educational. There's different ways to kind of position your brand. But I think just getting the fundamentals in the THC side, 99% of brands don't have it. And I'm not exaggerating. So they don't even have that.
That's crazy. Let's pick that apart, both those topics. So you like you mentioned on the THC side, like the basic marketing fundamentals are not in place. You got people that are just, it's either word of mouth marketing, or it's trade shows, or like, hey, a Facebook group, right? With no branding, no logo, no company name, even sometimes. Is that what you're saying?
There's usually a company name, but what they're doing is just a basic website that doesn't do a very good job explaining kind of the brand story or why the product, a basic product and packaging, and then a great sales team to get that product everywhere. And then the way that they try to win is by being a price leader, right? Like it's a race to the bottom right now. When you go into a dispensary and you talk to any of the bud tenders, or you talk to the owners of these dispensaries, whatever the cheapest product on the shelf is, or the most potent product on the shelf, those are the 2 that are selling. It's pretty interesting.
You know what? And it's interesting because I don't know if it's playing out that way in other markets. And I'm being real when I say that. Like, I know that I've heard that echoed from California, that sentiment of, high potency, this hyper focus on high potency THC products, or like you said, competitive pricing. I don't know if that's the same in like Colorado, or like, you know, some of the other states that have been online, because it's interesting just to see different trends throughout the states. Like D8 is huge in non-cannabis adult use states, right? And it seems like overall, whatever the trend is within each state, there's this appetite for THC, which is the psychoactive component. But of course, we also see the benefits of CBD as well, you know, when it comes to anti-inflammatory properties and things like that. So you're saying that brands can really differentiate themselves if they do a good job of educating their consumer base as to what their products do and the efficacy around them.
And I wish I could say good. I would just say okay. Like if you're just doing okay, you're so many levels above so many of these cannabis brands. They're actually doing pretty well in revenue. You know, they might not be as profitable as they'd like, but there's such a huge opportunity to differentiate, specifically with your product SKU, your messaging, and your owned channels. 99.9% of cannabis brands aren't doing that well. And there's a handful that are, and they're all like rocket ships. Like I'm sure you guys have seen CANN, and like they're just doing an incredible job with a unique product, with awesome social, and doing a fantastic job of telling their story and getting other people to tell their story for them.
What does it look like among like the marketing agency space when it comes to like Hawke Media is not, you know, exclusively focused on cannabis, right? Like as we've
Correct.
talked about. So how many marketing agencies are you guys seeing, like specifically in the California area, that are really have transitioned to cannabis? I would imagine a lot, because it's been legal for a couple, you know, 4 years now or so, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's a bunch popping up, but I strategically try to keep my blinders on when it comes to competition, right? I think I want to connect. If I meet another agency, I'm happy to chat with them. I'm sure there's a lot of things that we can probably do with synergies as opposed to competition. But yeah, there are a lot. You know, almost every couple weeks, I get somebody bring a new name that I've never heard of, and you know, most agencies last less than 2 years, but Hawke's been around more than 7 now, so it's very interesting.
Yeah, that question is kind of irrelevant to you again, because it's California, it's normalized there, right? Because when I think of other major agencies, like I would imagine that would be kind of a big decision that their stakeholders would have to make, you know, due to the stigma and of course the Schedule 1 regulation and whatnot.
Yeah.
So when you compare the two, we talked about THC brands versus the CBD brands. And you mentioned THC kind of being way behind when it comes to marketing fundamentals, and then you have oversaturation on the CBD side. Would you say that the CBD side like is more mature when it comes to the fundamentals? Like they do have a branding, they have logos, they have messaging. Are they more advanced in that way? It's just too saturated, and that's where it's difficult.
I would say by a long shot, yeah, because there's so many additional costs that go into building a THC brand, right? There's so many. You've got to, you know, there's so much that goes into getting that product on shelves and getting it sold. Whereas it's pretty easy to start a CBD brand, right? Like you can probably start a CBD company within 30 days if you really tried. And they're considerably more developed on the marketing side because their whole business model was predicated around e-commerce. So e-commerce fundamentals are baked within the launch of the company. Whereas on the THC side, you know, the e-com fundamentals are kind of overlooked because there's so many other costs and hurdles you have to get before you get to revenue. Does that make sense?
It does. Yeah. It does. No, and I think about like the challenges that the everyday marketer sees when it comes to, again, like the limitations for social media, for instance, like the ability to not run ads, right? Even though like if you're a cannabis brand, and I have two of them, they, you know, Facebook will offer you a $10 credit for ads, and then yet you can't run, which is kind of crazy, right? But so that's a challenge. But I know that in my previous roles at large Fortune 500 companies, the third party agencies that would work with the company that I was at, you know, if you're putting so much money into advertising, you have access to these platforms. You have access to the Facebook team, right? The Facebook client team. You have access to all that. So I would imagine that Hawke Media has a relationship with Facebook, Instagram, these companies internally. So what are some of the advantages that y'all see when it comes to like getting around these limitations on Facebook? Because I know that I talk to multiple people and they're like, yeah, it's a guessing game. Every day I wake up and I don't know if my Instagram is going to be pulled down. I don't know if my Facebook page disappeared. Yeah. So like, is there a playbook? Like, is there a secret sauce, or do they just lift the restrictions off of some companies that pay to play?
Well, there's a few brands out there that are just what we think of as whitelisted, right? How they got that whitelist, I'm not exactly sure. But yes, there's absolutely advantages to having Hawke in your corner when it comes to being a brand in the space. If your account does get shut down, as long as you weren't advertising, right? If you post something and it gets taken down, or a handful of other things and your account got taken down, we pick up the phone, we talk to Facebook, they get it back up 99% of the time. The other thing, we can help get you verified because we spent $100 million on Facebook last year. So we have a direct line to a full partnership team within Facebook, and same thing at Google. So yes, there's advantages, but no, we don't unfortunately have a workaround the advertising restrictions, because, a lot of our business depends on us playing fair with Facebook. And so if we try to like sneak a prohibited item advertising on Facebook, it's just not allowed. With that said,
that's not. So sorry, that's not what I meant. I meant like techniques. Like, we'll use the word techniques. Like, say, I'm sure that they flag product imagery that has the word THC on the bottle, right? Mm-hmm. Or CBD on the bottle, mm-hmm. and maybe the preferable language is hemp. Like, are there any types of key learnings or techniques that one could employ to kind of look out for things that wouldn't get flags, like examples like those?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, on the advertising side, yes, there's definitely best practices. I think, you're allowed to boost content. You're allowed to advertise content as long as you're not selling a product. With that said, Facebook's smart, right? They've got spiders kind of crawling around looking for the word CBD and THC and cannabinoid and 8 other words in there. So if they see too much of that, they will flag it, and but obviously try to shut it down. But with that said, we're running advertising for probably a handful, or a little bit more than a handful of CBD brands right now. And sometimes it works. It goes up for 3, 4, 6 weeks, and then it gets shut down. But then we call them, and then we get it put back up. We start a new account. There are definitely ways to go around it. But the good news is, because we're a really talented Facebook agency outside of the cannabis space, a lot of those best practices and skill set and talent is in the building already. So we're able to take advantage of that.
Mm-hmm. No, that sounds like it. Yeah. I mean, you guys have tons of experience in the space. And of course, the relationship that you have directly with Facebook is also a huge advantage for your clients. What do you think will happen? Like, what's your future prediction once the FDA implements consumer oversight, right? Once there's regulation and guidelines around sales and marketing messaging, who wins and who loses at that point?
Yeah, I'm very excited for that day. That's going to make all of our lives a lot easier. I think, as soon as that happens, my hypothesis is Facebook, Instagram, and Google are going to open up. We're going to be able to advertise like a typical e-commerce brand. We're going to know what we can and can't say. There's going to be rules and regulations about which symptoms CBD might treat. So we're going to be able to mention that in our marketing, in our collateral, in our influencer engagements, et cetera. It's going to be a beautiful day, but it definitely will massively increase the competition, right? You're going to see P&G and Johnson & Johnson and all of them start turning on their massive budgets and start advertising and winning for that space. I also think that CBD brands will go away. I don't think there's going to be CBD brands. I think there's going to be health brands. I think there's going to be sleep brands. I think there's going to be soreness brands. I think there's going to be a conglomerate of it all. Right now, I think it's interesting to see how many brands are catered around an ingredient and not a solution. And so I think the ethos of companies are going to adjust, where it's like, hey, we are a sleep brand and we use CBD, or we are, does that make sense?
It does. Yeah. No, I agree with you. I can't wait for that day either. I'm kind of just waiting for that day to come. And what I find interesting in what you said is, when you say that like it's going to be more hyper competitive, I totally agree with that. But are you saying that that hyper competitiveness is going to happen right away? Because in my view, it seems like there's going to be this immediate like shaking out, right? There's going to be the people that like you talked about earlier that have no branding, no logos, no website, right? Like, or basic websites. They're going to kind of be playing catch up to get their e-commerce and their digital marketing presence in the right, right situation, where the people that already have that are going to be ahead of the gate. They're already going to be running the ads, right? They're going to have all that collateral built and they're already going to be driving traffic. So in my opinion, I think that there will be a shakeout, but then you're right. Like when the pharmaceutical companies come in, they got the major marketing budgets and that's where they're going to turn it on. But they wouldn't do that right away because they're not, I mean, but who knows how that shakes out, right? Like if they're involved when the FDA does. So it's just time will tell, basically.
Yeah, I think there's going to be two things that happen. One, massive brands that already have a huge cult following will integrate a CBD SKU into their product mix.
Right.
And a lot of those big corporations already have right now a CBD brand sitting on the shelf waiting for rules and regulations to come out so that the second it does, they can go to market and start spending millions of dollars on a monthly basis. So I think it'll be pretty immediate. And I think the brands that have had a really strong ground game over the last couple of years, building a great brand, have a strong messaging, know their persona, like know their core demographic, understand their personas, and have started to build their audience, build their email list, build their social following, gotten press, gotten affiliates, gotten content and SEO backlinks, and started ahead on that, I think they'll absolutely have a head start on the other, like on the competition.
Yeah. I mean, and that just kind of stresses the point. Like if you're not putting, your digital efforts a priority, then it's just going to be inevitable that you're going to be catching up. Right. I mean,
yep.
You got to be doing that. So tell me, like, what else, Madison? What are you guys working on right now at Hawke Media when it comes to your CBD clients? And what are you looking forward to in 2021 and beyond?
Yeah, it's a combination of two things. I think, like I've been pretty clear on, is that filling the funnel, right? Like filling the depth of the funnel, making sure that you're educating and entertaining the traffic as it lands on your site with different types of content, both long form articles and like short form videos, user testimonials, product reviews, influencer reviews, events, engagements, partnerships with comparative brands. Really, really adding depth to your marketing mix, making sure that your social has, really great content, trying to engage with your audience through different forms of content, like a podcast or a YouTube video or a giveaway or a campaign of sorts. Like there's so many things to add depth to the funnel that we're doing a ton of that stuff, right? An absolute ton of that. Then at the same time, when it comes to traffic acquisition and actual customer acquisition, we're testing new channels all the time. Affiliate has definitely been the breadwinner because you're able to do it. And there's millions of influencers and publishers and bloggers and content creators out there. Leveraging them to tell your story for you and their interaction with your brand is massively valuable. So we've been doing that at a really high level and then continuously testing other channels.
How would you advise going about finding the right brand ambassadors or influencers when it comes to like an affiliate marketing partnership? Like, there's tons of them. I can't tell you, I post on Instagram and I immediately have, IG shout out promo and they say, let's collab. And I don't know, I mean, I'm sure they're bots and whatnot, but like there's tons of influencers out there. How do you know to pick the right one?
Yeah, I would say test small and follow the data, right? Like you're going to notice when you get an influencer or a publisher or a content creator. The word influencer is a little bit messy because anybody can be an influencer, but it's a big umbrella word that kind of makes all this a little bit easier to understand. So test small and then kind of listen to your audience, right? Like what makes the biggest impact and what speaks to your audience. I think listening to the data and like listening to your audience is something that's pretty overlooked. A lot of people want to outsource their marketing and just kind of let people handle it. I think it's really valuable to not only stay involved with the brand, but stay involved with the marketing partner that you hire and listen to some of the feedback that you're getting from your customers.
Yeah, data insights are so important. They just help you make more informed decisions, right? If you can't measure it, you can't manage it. So,
Yep.
uh, um, I had one other question for you, and that relates to personal branding. So there are obviously legacy operators in this space, you know, either from the illicit market or from early states that have come online, whether it's medical or adult use. And a lot of these people don't have a digital footprint, you know, even something as basic as a LinkedIn. So how important is personal branding, especially right now when we're at the forefront of both the CBD and cannabis movement?
Yeah, I mean, I think it truly depends on the type of brand you want to build, right? I think you're seeing personal branding come to the forefront around some brands. And I think that, you know, that individual is always going to be tied to that brand in different ways. But it depends on the ethos of the store, of the brand, right? If you're just going to go out there and be a price leader and give your customers the lowest bag of weed, then you don't really necessarily have to build the personal brand around it. But if you're going to be a quality leader, like a dosist is, right? Where like, okay, we're going to be around very specific dosages and very specific, you know, medically created product, then I think it's really important to have someone in the leadership team develop a brand around themselves.
Mm-hmm. It's got to be related, is what you're saying. The
Mm-hmm.
personal brand should correlate to the actual brand, especially if you're like the founder or the CEO, the head of the company, right? The face
Mm-hmm.
of it.
One of the things I also find really interesting is in these branding conversations that we have, or strategy conversations, a lot of people don't want to zero in too narrow on their messaging, right? They're like, well, if we go that specific, then we're excluding a whole group of people, right? We're excluding all those other people. And that's not necessarily true, because a product that is specifically created for a very specific solution for a very specific demographic might relate to other people, right? For instance, like an icy hot. An icy hot is made specifically for sports injuries, but when people get injured doing other things, they use icy hot because they're like, well, if it works for a serious sports injury, then it probably works for me, like lightly twisting my back when I was moving, right? Because
Right.
there's like value to that extreme. And so I think really zeroing in on your core demographic and your real value proposition really adds to the ability to scale your business.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And then, you know, with platforms like Facebook, they have that functionality where they allow you to hyper target those specific types of demographics, right? Age
Yep.
groups, income levels, behaviors, all that type of stuff. So you're right. Once you kind of use that data to inform what hyper targeted market or an audience you want to go after, just then you employ the tools to do it. So
Yeah. And
awesome.
Facebook's so damn smart. You don't have to tell Facebook too much anymore. As long as you create like captivating ads and set up the funnels properly, you know, you can go pretty wide and let Facebook do a lot of that work for you. As marketers, our job is to make sure that the funnel is set up properly, you know, the conversion points, the tracking, the ad type, the copy is set up, because the targeting is not as important as it used to be because Facebook's so damn smart now.
Very well said. I couldn't agree more. It is. It's scary. It's scary smart. Hey, Madison. Well, before we wrap up, I want to give you the floor. Is there anything that you want to leave the audience with that's top of mind?
Yeah, I would just say, you know, like I mentioned briefly at the beginning, that don't overlook the fundamentals, specifically on the THC side. You have to try to own your customers, even though you can't own your customers, right? At the end of the day, they're not going to be converting through a shopping cart on your website. You can't employ like some sort of a plugin that makes it feel like an e-commerce conversion. But at the end of the day, it's going to be the customer of the delivery service or the dispensary. That doesn't mean that you should just ignore trying to own the customer. So really put the time, take the effort, and build your own customer list through email and organic social and trying to drive traffic to site, because it will pay off in the long run. On the CBD side, please stop overlooking how important it is to try to educate and entertain the traffic that comes to your site. because there's 1,000 other brands are all around the same price point with a lot of the same SKUs. And the one that they're going to end up buying with is the one that they trust. And the way that you build that trust is through content and third-party testimonials and reviews, whether that's, customers, press, influencers, or a combination of each. So really, really take the time to fill that funnel on the CBD side, because that's what's going to help you stand out against your competition.
Very well said. I could not agree more, my man. Thank you so much for those insights. Where can people find Hawke Media's website and social media channels, and yours also, if they want to follow?
Yeah, absolutely. It's easy to connect with me. Hawkemedia.com is the website. My email is madison@hawkemedia.com. I've been there for a long time, so I don't have the first and last name like a lot of people do. Very proud of that. And then follow me on Instagram. I'm always posting stuff, and LinkedIn, Madison_Fiore.
One of the old heads at Hawke Media, man. You're getting up there.
I know. People ask me all the time if I'm gonna leave or when I'm gonna go do my own thing. I'm like, why? I love it here.
That's great. Hey, not a lot of people can say that, especially in the agency life. So that's good to hear, man. Awesome.
Yeah, we're building something special, and it's been a great rocket ship to ride.
It's great to see. Well, I look forward to watching you guys continually evolve and grow into the cannabis space. And yeah, man, keep spreading the good word and best practices regarding marketing in CBD and cannabis. We appreciate it.
Thanks, Kevin.
Yes.
Good.
Yes. And thank you all for listening. Bye.